call this meeting to order at 6:35. I would actually like to start with a moment of silence for the loss of a longtime board member, David Roddy, who died unexpectedly during our last meeting. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is agenda review. I do have one agenda adjustment. The board will need to meet in executive session to discuss a letter that we are going to send out to concerned parents. Any other agenda amendments? Hearing none, we'll move on to correspondence, visitors, and public comments.
Happy New Year.
I actually have a public comment I'd like to say. This is on behalf of myself and my family. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone from Missisquoi Valley School District who took time to send us a card, share a kind word or memory. Offer condolences for myself and my entire family. I especially want to thank the Highgate Elementary staff, past and present, who helped organize, set up, serve, clean, and take down for David's reception after the funeral. I would like to thank the Highgate Fire Department for helping set up and providing tables and chairs. Also, everyone who provided food and beverages, the incredible support from everyone towards Georgette and the rest of my family from so many people proves what a pillar David was in and around the community. Myself and my entire family appreciate beyond words the overwhelming kindness and generosity shown to us. Thank you again, everyone. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes from December 16th and December 17th. I'll entertain a motion for approval of December 16th minutes.
I'll move those minutes approval.
A second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from December 16th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-1. Second, I'll entertain a motion for the meeting minutes from December 17th.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
discussion?
I have one question and a suggestion. If we go to the Highgate math practices presentation,
Yes.
we indicate in our list of people, everyone that was there, but I think it would be appropriate under there somewhere that we mention the other two teachers who did quite an extensive presentation. I don't know if you want to do it down where it says in the second paragraph, their plan, because I know that Jen introduced it, but there were two other teachers who spent considerable time explaining how it was functioning. I think that name should be noted in that section.
Any other adjustments?
Board members present, Megan and myself, the towns we represent are missing. Just for consistency, I guess.
Okay,
Chris, before you go to vote, under others present, third line, where it mentions Dan's name as principal of, it should be MVU, and then Joyce Hakey, principal of Franklin. Dan is not the principal of Joyce. She would tell you that.
yes.
We won't make any comment about that.
Any other changes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving December 17th minutes as adjusted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 602. Okay, we're on to presentations. The first presentation is from the Northwest Technical Center, student presentation.
So I'd like to introduce Leanne Wright and Lisa Rocher from Northwest Tech Center while I try and make the slideshow work.
Thank you.
And she will introduce her guest.
Yes, I will. I'd like to introduce my colleague Jennifer Conrad. She's our Human Services Instructor. And her student Nevaeh. I'm sorry, your last name again? B-O-R. Okay, got it right. So you're going to be hearing from them in a bit. You got to get through a little bit of adult stuff first, so we won't take too long of your time. I know budget season is here and you've got lots of work to do. I also wanted to recognize Nevaeh's family in the back. It's Mom's birthday.
Happy birthday.
We've got dad and sister, so just wanted to thank you for supporting. Yes, right? Yes. So every year we like to just come and show our faces and let you know that we're your regional technical center. We support students here at Missisquoi Valley and also at VFK St. Albans. We're attached to VFK St. Albans, so it's really easy for us to be more involved in VFA, but we want to make sure that you know that we're available to all students at VFA, or at least the juniors and seniors that can come to our programming. So next slide, please, Julie.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to start from the beginning of Career and Tech Ed, just to give you some quick important advantages to Career and Tech Ed. I'm going to start over here, which is industry recognized credentials. That's really what sets Career and Tech Ed apart. So every single one of our programs offers industry recognized credentials. So examples of that are OSHA 30 in building trades. Another one would be ASE in our automotive program. We've got paraeducator that we have in human services. We have licensed nursing assistant in medical professions, just to give you an example of that. So all of the instructors facilitate that learning, and they actually get national certifications at the end of that. College credits. So just like high schools, in Career Tech Ed, we have what's called Fast Forward. So every junior gets one Fast Forward ticket, and then when they become seniors in Career Tech Ed, they get another Fast Forward ticket. So they can have up to 4 college credits by the time they graduate high school and Career Tech Ed. So really an advantage if kids are interested in taking summer courses through dual enrollment through our local community college, or they can travel to BTC if they wanted, or any of the state colleges. Work-based learning, you know what that is because we do it in high schools now. We have a work-based learning coordinator that is stationed in our office. And Jennifer is a great example. She works with our work-based learning coordinator to get students out in placements. So I'm just going to stick with you, Jennifer, because you're with us, and you can pop in as well. Actually, why don't you give some examples of what you do for work-based learning? Because you do a rotation with all of your students depending on interest.
So really our goal is to get our students out in the community. So a lot of people, I've only been at the Tech Center for 3 years, and so one of the things I'm trying to communicate is what the Human Services program is all about, and it's students who are interested in getting into the helping profession. Mainly students are coming in who want to get into education, which is all of our focus here, and so we're putting them out into the area schools. And in their senior year, we're trying to give them a more extensive internship, and so students from MVU, we're connecting with the schools up in this county or up in the district, and so working with the Swanton schools, trying to put them in situations in their own communities where they're familiar, and give them access to opportunities. But we're also, we have students that come to us that are interested in counseling or mental health, And so we have a really solid partnership with NCSS and Voices Against Violence. So trying to create community awareness that impacts us all in Franklin County. Because there's a real need, I was talking with Julie earlier, that there's a real need for positions in that area. So we try to put them as young as juniors out and meeting community members, whether it's workshops that we're bringing into the tech center or putting students out in the field to do that work.
Anything to add to that?
Well, she will. She's Vivian really is the highlight for her to kind of talk about it, as you've probably heard adults speak about our programs before, and it's really the students who make the tech center shine.
And our instructors. Rigorous curriculum. So not all of our programs have nationally recognized curriculum, but those that do not really work hard to partner with our advisory committee. So we invite business and industry into our building twice a year. It's a state regulation where they counsel us on curriculum that's needed for workforce and industry to ensure that we have the proper equipment, that we are doing everything that we should in order to support and make sure that students get what they need so that they can go on to the next step once they graduate high school and or college. And then also in the state of Vermont, through all of the career tech ed schools, we have 16 of them. So we have what are called cluster meetings. So all of the human services instructors come together twice a year to then talk about curriculum and make sure that they're collaborating and not working in silos. So really, really good, because we don't have another human services teacher in the school where Jennifer can just say, hey, I want to run this by you. So it's really nice to have that connection in Vermont. So. Outreach activities, we work hard to shout from the rooftops about how great we are. We think we're really great. And so these are all of the examples of what we do. I think you can attest to the middle school tours that come. The administration are very supportive. I think we have every single 8th grader come through our doors. And how that works is we come here and we share all of the different programs that we have, which are Ken, which you're going to find in your packet. And they choose two. And they come and they spend an hour in one program and an hour in the other. So that exposes them to the tech center early on. We also have Tech and Engineering Day, so this will be the 5th year that we've done that. That's open to all 7th and 8th graders. I think MVU took a trophy home one of those years, so that was good news. We have high school classroom visits, so our outreach coordinator and our guidance counselor will come here and works with Mary Parkman, who's very inviting and supports our students, supports your students to learn more about careers. We work on social media, so you'll see if you want to like us on Facebook, or if you want to join our Instagram, you'll see MBU students highlighted there as well. And radio and print advertising happens often. We have a partnership with the Messenger, which is, I'm blanking on the name of that. Lisa, help me out. Leaders of Tomorrow. Thank you. So Matt Sweetster from our automotive program is a MBU student, and he was highlighted as a leader of tomorrow. So every week we get to choose a student from a program to highlight who they are and what they're going to be when they graduate high school. So pretty cool partnership. This is a graph. Give you a minute to wrap your head around this. I always have to look at a graph before I can sort of see, all of the data. But you've got all of our programs on the left-hand side, and underneath you've got a 5-year span with different colors of the enrollment for MBU students. You'll see here at FY20 there are some programs where there's just not interest. So engineering, digital video production, digital arts is no longer one of our programs. We combine that with digital video production to make it digital media studies, and no interest in medical professions this year as well. So just a graph to see the different programs progress from year to year. And then this is just another graph here showing the enrollment. You'll see 5 years ago we had about 41 students from MBU attending. We're down to 19, so we're not doing something right in regards to encouraging kids to come to career tech ed. No interest, again, well, this is the same interest actually, so I won't redo that. But, and it varies. You'll see public safety is very strong here. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of public safety programs in the state, and so we actually will often get students from Fairfax and Richford and different towns. So there's really quite a mix of students from different schools in public safety. And you can see, I was going to point something else out that I forgot. Cosmetology was very, very strong early on. It has waned a bit. So I think there's lots of things pulling kids. They have to make choices in their school day, and whatever we can do to create the flexible pathways for them, we're willing to talk and work with you to see what we can do to support kids.
Do you think that the numbers,
Sorry, do you want me to go back, Doc?
do you think the numbers, as I look at the numbers, they've dropped off considerably, but do you think of a program like cosmetology? I live in Swanton, we must have 8 cosmetologists in Swanton. That some of the young people who are enthused get out there and really can't find a placement or a placement that pays, and therefore word gets out that I just wonder, that's quite a drop off.
It is quite a drop off. I actually think it's the opposite. There's a lot of independent cosmetologists that are renting their own chairs, and then the proximity to Burlington, and then the recent increase in spa services and nail technicians. So it's quite a range of services that happen within cosmetology. There's the barbering as well. So
Are the VFA enrollments also dropping off?
This cosmetology is one of our strongest programs. It is this year, in the first year, we limit it at 16, and it has 15.
I'm surprised that building trades is not bigger.
I know.
Yeah, me too. We had a lot of MPU students that used to come to the building trades program. And again, I'm wondering if with work-based learning and flexible pathways, if they have the opportunity to maybe leave on their own and sort of find the skills directly through the employer. But Jennifer and I have had several conversations. Kids in 8th grade, they're so motivated and they love this program and they love that program and they're going to apply to this one and apply to that one. And then somewhere between the 9th and 10th grade, this doesn't happen.
The same thing with automotive. It's a
Yep.
big drop.
That's not surprising to me, only because you have a similar program. It's not an automotive program, but you have is it called ag mechanics? So if, the traveling, I can imagine, is difficult for kids because, they're on a bus. So, it's not a pleasant ride there and back, and, sometimes they miss out on things here. But, a student has to really be driven and focused on a particular program to want to pursue it. So,
And if I can add to, Dawn, you asked about VFA enrollment, and our enrollment with VFA students continues to increase.
Which is pretty typical if you're centers
Close.
next door.
Correct. At least we're not traveling on a bus from Fairfax to Burlington, right? So, and then the other piece, while you're asking, there's on the right-hand side of your folder that you can look at on your own, we provided labor market data. So it talks about all of the different areas of our market, of the workforce, and where we stand just within Franklin County. And we requested this data to be disaggregated by tech center throughout the state. So that's just some light reading that you can do later, okay?
it actually is in layman's terms. It's not that complicated to read, which I appreciate it.
I have a question too for the enrollment. You said BFAs is actually on the increase, MUs is obviously on the decrease. How about statewide tech centers? Is it generally on a decrease, on the
Yes.
increase?
Yes.
It's on a decrease?
Decrease, yeah. Yep.
And the reason for that primarily is because of the funding structure through the state. So we all want what's best for kids. We all want our kids to explore different careers. We all want them to do internships. We all want them to hopefully pick what they would like to do before they go spend $30,000, $40,000 a year. But the funding structure at the state level is a barrier for high schools and tech centers.
There's a committee working on that with Bill Talbot. Right?
That's correct.
That might be a good segue into having our students out,
Yeah.
because like I said, I've only been in the tech center world. I was an elementary teacher at Snowden City for about 12 years and was out in the islands before that for about 5. And I have children at VFA and live in the community of St. Albans. And I didn't even know as much as I should have about the tech center and the opportunities. And I think the biggest sellers of the tech center, so I first found out about the tech center when my son was like, I want to take this class in video production. It looks amazing. And when my husband and I went on the tour and got to see, I was like, how do we not know about this and these opportunities? There's Mac computers and all of this opportunity for this learning for you in high school and to get college credit for it? Wait a minute, how did I not know about this? And so I think the students are really, we have to put them out there more to talk with all of us about it, because they are the sellers. They're the ones that increase enrollment. So if you saw, like, the Human Services program has stayed fairly steady with MBU, but the students are the ones who sell it to each other. They're the ones who tell each other about these awesome opportunities, because when they're young and passionate about something, they get it done. Just like my son was like, no, I'm taking video production, and I didn't know about it, and he made me know about it. And that's kind of why Nevaeh is here tonight. We had said, Mrs. Wright and Ms. Roger had said, oh, we're gonna go and speak with the school board. Is there anyone interested in speaking? And Nevaeh was like, I would love to go and share already. And she's a junior, she's a first year student in the program, so she's only been with us a couple of months, but already she is so eager and excited about the opportunities. So I'll let her share a little bit about it and try to add in.
I'll start just by talking a little bit about like my experience in the tech center and kind of like what it's like for me and all the opportunities it has. And if anybody has any questions, just feel free to ask questions and I'll answer to the best of my ability. But I actually got into the tech center by taking my careers class that every high school student at MVU it's a mandated class that you have to take, and I'm really glad that we have to take it because I learned a lot about what I want to do with my life. And they came in and did a presentation. Mr. Roshi came in with Ms. Boslin, who's our counselor, and I said, human services, that sounds kind of like what I want to do. So I signed up, and here I am. And I really enjoyed it so far. It's a lot of a learning opportunity as well as my class is like a family. It's all girls in there, which is, I wish there were more boys that were in the human services field just because we see a lot of female teachers and not as many male teachers. So encourage, if anybody has sons, encourage your sons to go into the human services field. But we do work placements as they have talked about, which is where you get, I think I've gone on 3 so far this year, and we'll do more. We start at learning about infancy and preschoolers, and I went on a work placement to PJ's Child Care Center, and I was there for a week, so I actually got to kind of see what all the workers did and work with them. And then I went to town school, I think, and I was in a preschool classroom there, which is definitely a change from the classroom that we have attached to our classroom because they're 3-year-olds. And just a change from the 3-year-olds to the 4-year-olds, they're so different, but I love working with them. So that's another opportunity we have. We have a preschool attached to a classroom, and we get to go in there every week. And that's probably my favorite part of my day every day, is working with the little ones and getting to just see them learn and grow. It's awesome. Yeah. And then we have a lot, we get college credits too. I think we get 2, right? We get 2 college classes.
Yes.
And MVU offers dual enrollment classes. So I'm able to take 2 dual enrollment classes through MVU, and then I also get 2 through the Tech Center, which is like 12 college credits, which is almost like a half a semester, like an entire semester or something like that, which saves a lot of money. So I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of those and doing that this summer. We take a lot of trainings. So I am CPR and first aid certified. The mandated reporter training that if anybody's a teacher, administrator, you have to take that. We get that. There's a few others. We took them in the beginning of the year.
So bloodborne pathogens, confidentiality training, communication skills.
Yes. So, and we get, we're actually working on right now this week, we're making our portfolios. So we get to have all of our certifications and everything in there for when we leave. We can also, as a senior, we can take the para course, and we can, if college isn't the only thing that's out there for people, and I do like how the Tech Center doesn't push that on everybody. They kind of prepare you for the real world too. So if you don't want to go to college, you don't have to. You can, there's many other things you can do. If you want to be a para right out of high school, you can do that. But it definitely does help and prepare you for college too, if that's what you're going to do. In my case, that's what I plan to do. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, my specific plans, I'm not set in stone yet. When I first went into the program, I was like, I think I want to be a reading interventionist, you know, for like 5th and 6th graders. I don't know if I could do the little littles. And then I went into the preschool and I was like, I love this. So I might be changing my plan a little bit, but I do want to still maybe do something in the reading kind of field, because English is my favorite subject. One of the only things I really like to do in school, so yeah.
Great.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Try to.
How did you hear about it? How did you learn?
My careers class.
Okay.
They come in and do a presentation every year to the careers class, and I heard about it, and my careers teacher was like, "Okay, I know what you want to do. This is for you.
Okay.
Sign up." So I did.
I wondered
really
what kind of
liked it.
encouragement you got, like how you knew.
Yeah, my family's also very supportive too, so that's good. But yeah, I also like wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do at this time last year. I come from a long line of teachers and stuff, and I was like, no, like I don't want to do that. I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna do something different. And I was like, I have to do this. This is all I like to do. So yeah.
Very nice. Good job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But students like Nevaeh, it makes our job very easy and pleasurable, so.
That's why we want more of them.
Great presentation.
Are you going to be a teacher, or what are you going to do?
I hope so. Something like that. Yeah.
We need early childhood teachers. Just saying.
Talk to that lady over
We want you to
there.
come back to this area, so
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is, especially if we have students taking the paraprofessional course, we want to give them, you know, we talk to people out in the schools and they said, you know, we can train people to come and be paras in our school, but we want people who have, or students who have professional work habits, who are able to communicate, who show up. And so that's what the Tech Center helps them to establish those habits. And so, and we want them to come back to our school. So currently I have 11 students in my senior program. So it's a 2-year program. The goal is to have you come on and stay for 2 years so we can really help you build those communication skills and professional work habits. But then on top of that, I have 11 students who are off to college in either 2 or 4 year. But last year I had many students who completed the para class and are in Franklin County as paraprofessionals. And ideally, that's really what the Tech Center is about. We want people to, our students to go out and come back and work in our communities. So.
Something else I kind of forgot to touch on too. It's not quite as academically based, but it's definitely like a family in there. I remember the first day walking in, especially with teenage girls, it's like, oh, are they judging me? Like, what's this gonna be like? But after the first week, we were all just talking, getting along great, and I had a bug in my ear about possibly doing early college at the beginning of the year, and then I went to Miss Conrad and I was like, I think I'm gonna stay. I love this class and I love the girls in it, and I don't want to leave, so I'm gonna come back next year. And
But you do bring up a good point that for MBU students, I think that sometimes is a bit of a barrier because we're attached to BFA. That becomes the idea that it's the BFA Tech Center. It's not. And so we're trying to get more students to say, no, this is your regional Tech Center. You know, we want you to have opportunities there as well. You're not going to feel like this is BFA. And we really work hard in all of our programs to make it feel that way.
it's also nice to get a change of scenery too. After like a few years, you know, you get into a routine, but being here every day, all day is fun, but I think the change of scenery and kind of a different environment and just a different class and different people is nice too. I like meeting new people and getting to know new people.
I have just a general question. Do you know offhand from all of your students the percentage that go on to college versus the percent that go into the workforce?
We do not have that data because, well, there's data that's over time, and then there's like the first year data. So I think last year it was 57%, but then those students that go on to college, do they then decide that they're going to go back into the workforce? So 57% were going on to college or higher education. So it could have been an apprenticeship program for electrical or plumbing. And then we also have students that go through the service. So specifically college, it's a low percentage. So I can make that for you.
Okay, thank you.
And it changes year to year.
Yes, I'm sure.
About 3 years ago, a group of us, some of us are still around the table, were very excited because our superintendent, Wyndham Goodrich, said we were working with Northwest Technical and we were going to try to see if we couldn't do something cooperatively building up our ag program. I don't know what's happened to that. To be honest with you, I haven't heard a word about it in 2 years. Not criticizing Julie, she has plenty to do with the superintendent. But to me, that would have been a real bonus, and it can happen because I've worked with other school districts and states where it can happen. So not tonight probably, but I'd like to know what is happening with that. Because to me, if you were sending students here, I think that would even maybe entice other students to meet BFA students here and say, hey, I can go that way too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There were several meetings last year about collaborating. And I think that Winton's vision and my superintendent's vision were not aligning. And then with the retirement of Winton and Julie coming on board, we just haven't come back together to discuss it. What I would also say to you is that in any career and tech ed center, when you have a student who wants to participate in a program that their regional tech center doesn't offer, they can go to the tech center that offers the program that they want. So if we have students at BFA that want to be in ag, then they can come to MBU and participate in that ag program, but they have to provide their own transportation. And then the same thing here at MBU, kids, can come to our center. So there was conversations about satellite and conversations about how we work together. And again, I think the funding is the sticking point. As the money
I guess I would encourage you not to drop the ball. I started working with technical centers about 60 years ago, and there's some amazing things you can do if you want to. I don't mean you, people. So I would hope that the ball that was dropped be picked back up and see if there's some way we can take and get students from Fairfield, St. Albans Town to know about our ag program. And
Thank you.
Ty?
So when I was in school, we filled a bus back then. The bus went every day and it was full. It's kind of discouraging in a little bit seeing the numbers. I realize that everybody involved is trying to bring the numbers back up, and I'm glad of that. I've taken adult learning courses up to the tech center, so I know about it, and I'm glad that you guys are there. My question is, listening to you guys, you're saying you're seeing 8th graders really excited, but by the time they're juniors, maybe they've changed thoughts. First part of the question is there potential to have like a beginner's, it maybe as a sophomore, to open that up where they may still have that interest, and then so there's not 2 years in between losing it, having the interest, and then get sidetracked here at MBU and with something else that MBU provides, and not really go towards their goal of what they wanted in 8th grade.
Yeah. So eighth grade is the middle school outreach where they come and they participate in 2 of the workshops, and then they have the opportunity to come for Tech and Engineering Day as 8th graders. So 2 opportunities in 8th grade. Then as 9th graders, we come here and present in the career classes. So you're right, there's like that 1 year sort of, black hole where they don't really hear from Northwest Tech Center, and we've acknowledged that. The challenge to do like a mini course is the transportation piece. So, transporting students to our school for an hour is not realistic. And then the other piece is I believe they have core academics that are needed and necessary. They're freshman and sophomore year, so they try to get those out of the way, is my understanding. And so coming as a junior is the only option right now.
Okay. And the second piece is, are the grading systems, back when I was in school, there was grading requirements. I don't remember them all back then, but do they align now, because of the difference in the systems of grading?
Great
and
question.
Requirements?
Yeah, does anyone align in the state of Vermont with proficiencies? So we are assessing students with a scale score of a 1 through 4. That is what we're doing as a tech center. You can imagine how challenging it is when you have several high schools that you're trying to report those scale scores to, and they might still be using letter grades, and they might be using a scale from 1 to 5, or they might have 2.5, 4.5 in there. So my answer to you is they are not aligning.
But children aren't getting denied the opportunity
No.
because of
No,
those grading systems not aligning.
I'm in close communication with the administration. They know that we're assessing on proficiencies and scale scores, and we are not penalizing kids. So we work together to ensure that that doesn't happen. It's tricky to try to translate a scale score into an A, B, C, or a number, because that's not the intent of proficiency. But we're working hard to make it work. And this will be the first year that happens with MVU. So there won't be a final scale score until June, because with proficiencies, it's a growth mindset. You have really 2 years to show proficiency in the standards in our tech center. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
And then you had mentioned about entrance requirements. We do still have entrance requirements. Attendance is important, attitude, and then attainment towards certain proficiencies are required. So for example, I'm going to say in medical professions, you have to have basic biology under your belt, because they take anatomy and physiology, and they're also doing human biology through CCB. So you have to have that basic understanding in order to be successful. And then sometimes there's certain English classes that are required, because some of the textbooks have a certain readability. So it's difficult to come in at a 7th grade reading level if the textbook readability is at a 10th grade. But we work with special educators. We're very accommodating when it comes to accommodations and modifications for students that may have challenges, and so we're accommodating.
I get 2 separate report cards. Like, I get one from MBA with letter grades and one from tech with number grades.
Okay.
So
Do you feel like it's been difficult to get?
not really. It's kind of communicated clearly. Like that tech, they tell you right off, especially if you come from MVU, because I think we're the last class. I'm class of 2021. I think we're the last class that's getting graded with letter grades. So you won't have this problem with the next couple classes that come through. It'll be kind of similar, but for us, it's as long as you understand how you're being graded, it's.
Quick question. So along those lines, if you have your MVU transcript and the tech centers for your seniors and they're applying to college, are the school profiles including the differences in how each can be converted, because GPAs are recalculated, so how to combine those two?
Yeah, well, we have a school profile, so our school profile will go along with the transcript that communicates what the scale scores are. We don't have a conversion scale of, a 2 is a 60 or a 70. So we leave that up to the sending school to translate. So they look at the standard
in the leveled class, and then they make adjustments according to their scale score. So Jennifer and I are working on that.
Okay, so then your tech report card would be translated by your team into something that was coherent with the rest of the transcript?
We've been doing that for a little while, mostly on the tech center, I've been doing the translation, but we'll collaborate on that.
We sort of did proficiencies in letter grades up until last year. We sort of straddled both, and it was challenging. And so this year was the first year we're assigning letter grades, just the standards with the proficiency scores. And the kids, the instructors do a great job communicating what the standards are and how they're able to earn and be proficient.
And with tech centers, we don't award credit, we recommend credit. So we never provide a transcript because it's actually the school where the student resides in, and that's where the transcript comes from.
And any college classes that they take through the tech center will show up as such. I'm assuming that's on your transcript as well for any students that take in dual enrollment as well. And it just shows that a student is able to do college work, so that speaks volumes as well.
Yes.
All great questions.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We went over, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I'll get you the data.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is with Jeff Benet on truancy.
The last time I saw you folks, I was recovering from knee replacement. And it was going really, really well. It's like, great, I'm happy to go.
I thought you were doing the Hamel or something.
Right, well,
Didn't go well.
listen, I didn't anticipate that I was gonna fracture my patella. I have a fractured kneecap. And, I don't know, it wasn't in the cards.
The new one or the old one?
It's the new one. It's literally something that's unheard of, a fracture. And it's not, it's not because I fell, it's not because I owed someone money and they. So many people have asked.
No baseball bats
So many
involved.
people, old baseball bats, so Jeff, pay up your loans, your debt. But I would understand that, I'd say, okay, but I can't figure it out. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about truancy.
Yes.
Let me start by just asking folks, when you think of truancy today, do you think of truancy as an issue that we deal with mostly today in schools, but it's not something that was dealt with, let's say, when you were students? What do you think? Is truancy a bigger issue today than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago? What would you think in terms of the issue of truancy? First of all, let me just say truancy. When we talk about truancy, it's good to know the terms. Usually we talk about truancy and chronic absenteeism. So truancy is the number of times you've missed for unexcused absences. Okay, so truancy, unexcused absences. When we talk about chronic absenteeism, that's everything. That's whether it's excused, unexcused, that's the whole ball of wax. So we, I think, pretty much interchange the terms, right? I mean, we just say truancy / chronic absenteeism. We talk about truancy.
Sure.
Yeah. So truancy. So what do you think? More an issue back then,
Same.
or today?
I think it's probably on par with each other.
So pretty similar. Yeah.
It's been a problem for at least 30 years.
Well, as long as we've known each other, it's been a problem. So Don, why do you say that the 30 years that it's been? Yeah. I mean,
The thing is that I'm old enough to remember when it was appropriate for a youngster to leave school at 16 years of age. There were jobs for them, 16. I remember kids leaving Memorial in high school at 16, went out and got a job and probably making more than their beginning teachers were. Okay, but those jobs are no longer there. Those jobs aren't there. Were they truant? Yeah, they were gainfully employed. But as we got into the 70s and 80s, I don't know if it's different social opportunities, but you started seeing truancy. And certainly by the 80s, in my career, you started seeing truancy. Really hardcore kids that had no interest in coming to school, and their parents had no interest in seeing they got there.
Yeah, so it's interesting what Don's saying, but the kids don't have the interest, but in some cases, the parents are not particularly interested either. I think what some people would be surprised about is that it's not just an issue of the high school. You know, a lot of people think of truancy and you think of, okay, that's an issue for high schools. A lot of people think that's an issue in urban settings, not in rural settings. Obviously, that's not true. It's an issue in rural settings, and it is an issue, believe it or not, as young as kids in elementary school. So in elementary school, administrators here from Swan, Ivy, Franklin, would talk to the issues. It's not that we see so much of it at the elementary level, so it's not the numbers, but it's the intensity of the need. The inordinate amount of time that's spent on these cases in elementary school, first, second, third grade. That's a little surprising to folks, that it could be that young. Again, you think of it at the high school. So the question, you know, more today, we can't really judge that well. Why? Because we didn't keep the numbers back then. So Don, when you're talking about it, it was more anecdotal. You know, I remember you and I could get together and talk about it.
You know, at one time, the state of Vermont, you didn't just report ADM, you also reported ADA.
Yeah.
So you did keep track of it.
But Don, do you remember as a superintendent, how difficult it was because definitions, I was talking to Julie about this earlier today, definitions were all over the place. Everyone had different definitions. So it's literally impossible to get a sense of, is the issue, particularly Germany, let's say Fairfax, compared to Swan. And I could sit with Don as the superintendent of Franklin West and ask him the issue, and you would talk to me about individuals. You know, here, we often talk about the numbers. We started seeing patterns with numbers. So in any case, we didn't have the definitions back then.
Well, we had truant officers, I know I'm interrupting.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And I'm going to tell you, as a superintendent, which goes back a few years, you called a truant officer, he knocked on your door and said, Mom, Johnny is supposed to be in school, and I'm here to get him.
Right.
And so there was I don't say it was fear, but there was some kind of relationship there that says, if you're not coming to school, this guy who's held the truant officer, you had to appoint one every year, superintendents had to report to the
I think
state.
it was fear.
It was more than fear, but many times it was somebody you knew and there was an embarrassment, which I'm not saying is essentially good either, but it was. But now the courts, everybody throws their hands up and just ignores it.
But the issue, what Don is bringing up is exactly the point. It was an issue then. So we had truancy people. I mean, it's like, think about it. We had truancy folks, and then it kind of disappeared. And then nowadays, we have it again. Here at MVU, MVU is one of the few schools, to its credit, a truancy specialist. Contract with NCSS gives us truancy specialists here at the high school. That's something that we don't see very often. And yet, as Don's saying, we had truancy officers, back then. So the issue of truancy has been an issue. I've been in education many years. It's been an issue. But it's become more and more of an issue, I'd say, over the last 10 to 15 years, where we're really seeing the numbers. And like I said, we're seeing the intensity. So there was a time that we tried to deal with it pretty much ourselves. If you had an issue of truancy, we might call up a parent, ask them to come to school, and we try to deal with it. It didn't work. And as Don said, kids could drop out or they could just get jobs, and it was okay, because even with the GED, they could get jobs and they were decent paying jobs, and that was okay. That's not the case any longer. You get the GED, is it gonna be the same as a high school diploma? No way. And we know that. So what we're seeing today is something very different. So, okay, so we know that we've got issues, and let's say, we're looking at the Missisquoi, and we know that we've got the elementary schools and the high school, and we know that there are issues. So what do we do? What do we do with the issue? First of all, we have to look at the definition, and I think we're all on the same page. So if I turn to Dan and Jay, or if I was turning to Joyce and Franklin, or Dina and Swan, Chris, I think, is here from Highgate. We have the same idea in terms of truancy when we're talking about truancy / chronic absenteeism. So we're talking about the same terms, truancy. Now, how we go about dealing with it, is it as consistent as the definition terms? No. What we all have are letters that go home. Letters that go home is not just something that we do, it's something obligatory that sounds good. It's something that does work. So in some cases, and I want to suggest to you, the way we look at truancy is think about a continuum, one end and the other. We think about truancy and we think about prevention. So how to prevent it from becoming an issue at all. And then on the other end, so we look at prevention, we look at intervention, but drastic intervention, which is legal. All right, so as Tom said, you know, you can go into the court system. And that's one end to the other. By sending the letters home, we're trying to look at prevention. We send a letter home to parents at an interval of 5, 10, 15 days. So I'm talking 5, 10, 15 days when excused and unexcused. If a kid's got absent for reasons, let's say medical, then typically that's not going to be the case. But when we know that a student does not happen to, you know, and has missed those days, a letter does go home. Now, the nature of the letter might be different at, again, primary school, for instance. Elementary schools, most of the letters go home initially, explaining to parents why it's important for your kid to go to school in elementary school. The reality is that parents that feel, look, my kid's gonna miss school, and she wants to miss it this morning, why get into a fight? Why get into struggle? What's the big deal? She's only in first grade, so you miss school. And the feeling is, and it's honestly, you know, felt that, what's the big deal? It's not like, you know, she's a high school student. So first grade, second grade, third grade, kids start missing schools. The elementary school, the letter goes home at 5 days and it talks to parents about the importance of going to school, the importance of having your kids go to school every day. So it's an explanation. And I think it's something that's reaching out to parents. Oftentimes we'll say, if there are issues that we should know about, let's get together. And we come in, and parents will come into school, and we meet. Right, so that's in 5 days. At a high school level, it might be a little bit different in terms of letting people know that at this juncture, your child is in jeopardy of, and we start talking a little bit more in terms of what could be going on in terms of not a punishment, but what could be going on from a very real perspective that your child is missing school, you know, next steps are. So there's something that happens, and it happens at every level, when we're moving from primary to secondary in terms of, I don't want to say well, it is the content, the intent. The intent goes from just explaining why education is important to the secondary. It really is, you know, getting into, look, your child doesn't go to school. This is what we're dealing with by law. And that's when we start talking about the legal ramifications. I mean, to some extent, is that I think we would feel a little foolish talking to parents with first graders or second graders or third graders even, that we're looking at legal issues, you know, and you're in jeopardy of. But at the high school level, that's really what we're talking about. So the letters go home. 5 days the letter goes home. Hopefully there's the communication. And we establish what we refer to communication feedback loops. We start the communication with the family. We know that communication is one of the most critical factors that we can have. And it's also one of those things that we can establish at very little cost in terms of money. We establish it by providing folks with phones, and we've done that here at MBU. I remember the issue, teachers felt, look, we'd love to call parents, but there are not enough phones. They were right, we answered, you know, their plea, and we got phones in. So that was something that teacher needed to call parent, they could do it. And that's where we always looked at, the first strategy was always looking at the teacher. Let it be the person where your child is actually having the problems, the teacher, okay? And that would be the first contact. Most times, that's it. That's all that's necessary. People are embarrassed as much as anything. You call up, and the parent is at the primary level, parent is embarrassed to say that, I'm really sorry, you know, she just didn't go to school. You keep those kind of records, and people are surprised. One of the other things is the difference between back then and today. the records are kept. The data is something we keep, as Don says, for, for ADA purposes. There are all kinds of purposes, but we know kids that are missing school. And that's something that we know we have, and that's critical. So when we talk about, and I gave you a handout that when you have trouble falling asleep one night, read this and you'll sleep.
No, it's pretty good.
But what you would find is that in terms of this, that the parent really doesn't have that sense, in terms of what, did it matter so much? Well, yeah, it does, and we do have the information. That information is really critical, that we're able to say the 5-day, the 10-day, the 15-day. It's tracking the kids' progress and lack of progress for the right reasons. 10 days, it goes out. We start to feel, and this is something that I think is really important, we start to feel in this area that we can't deal with these issues alone. That it's something that when we're dealing with truancy, yeah, we're gonna deal with it all we can, but it isn't simply a school issue or a family issue or the child's issue. We're trying to look at it more what we call holistically. There are all kinds of factors that go into it. Yes, we can talk about a child who has school phobias, and if that's legit, well, okay, we deal with that, and that would be dealing with the kid. The family, maybe there are issues, maybe there are drug abuse issues, there are all kinds of substance issues that are gonna prevent kids from coming because their parents just don't care. Then we deal with things at the school level. And you would say, well, what at the school level? Well, attendance policies and how we do this, and what it is that we do in terms of the steps that are taken. The 5-day, 10-day, 15-day, what the letters say, and then what do we do in response to that? We look at the school and truancy, and finally we also look at the community. What are community factors? Are we dealing in a really low income community where the kids are more than 2 to 3 times more likely to be having truancy issues, more than 2 to 3 times likely if they're coming from a low income situation. So that's something that we keep in mind. But listen to how I'm saying this. It's really these 4 domains, that we look at. It's not one or the other or the other. Usually the mitigating factors is all there, and that's how we address it. So how are we gonna do that? We're not social workers, when we say we're not social workers, but fortunately, we understand that today, schools are expected to do more and more, and what we do have are those people right on board. First it started, and it's interesting to see, when we started looking at truancy and recognizing that it was an issue for all of us, and it was an issue that went beyond school, we started looking at bringing in outside agencies into the school. So we have things, and we still do these things. First off, we have, educational support teams. They start in school. When we bring the youngsters up at an educational support team, and we say, okay, what are we gonna do around this? And sometimes we'll say, at that juncture, maybe we need to bring in some other agencies. We particularly see this when we use what we call a coordinated service plan, a CSP. Coordinated service plans are mandated for use if we're dealing with special ed, but the model itself, the framework, is something that can be used in any case. Now, why is it a good framework? Because what we're doing is saying, it's not just our issue, and what do we look to do? We look to bring in outside agencies. We realize that we need social service agencies involved. We bring in NCSS. We might bring in DCF. A lot of times people think DCF and they shudder because they think it's, it's that agency which takes our children, and there is that element that, that's what DCF does. But DCF is in the business of family reunification. That's really what it's all about. DCF can provide what we call respite, and when families need that, it's one of the only places that we can look to that they can provide monies for this thing called respite, and DCF can do that. So we meet as a coordinated service plan. We use that framework, and we meet. We bring in the other agencies, and we say, okay, so what is it, and how is it that we're going to deal with this problem? Now, I say that's what we used to do, and it's what we still do. But given the severity of the need today, what we're doing more and more of is actually employing people in the schools. So here at MVU, we have a truancy specialist. We have, homeschool coordinator. Laurie Baker would be a homeschool coordinator. So a homeschool coordinator. We have a truancy specialist, and Dee Raleigh, as a school registrar, maintains the data on every student here. She does an amazing job. So we have 3 people who's really dedicated to that, but I would say everyone is. Everyone wants to see kids in school. There's no one that doesn't. So we look to work together. However, like I said, we've got these other agencies. So we look at the 10-day, and what do we say? We're gonna look to the possibility of the outside agencies coming in and working together with the outside agencies. Then, at the 15-day, we're starting to get into some more serious concerns. And at that point, we start to talk about the possibility of legal ramifications. Now, historically, a letter would go home. Now, this was mostly at FBU, because letters weren't going home at the primary level to tell parents that your child is in jeopardy. You're risking a fine and so on and so forth. That really doesn't happen again. It's not the numbers at the elementary school, it's the severity of the need. Okay, but what we would see at the high school, is something different. So, at the high school level, we are looking at the legal piece. The letters used to go home and it would say, if you don't have your child go to school, Don, you probably remember this really well. It said the state's attorney gets involved, you're facing a $1,500 fine. And I can remember initially, wow, a $1,500 fine, I better get on it. Within a short period of time, people realized it was pretty much a joke. And they would take the letter, crumble it up, and just toss it, because they knew it didn't have any teeth. That was one of the things we realized we were gonna have to do something about, which was involving the state's attorney's office and involving Jim Hughes. And that was gonna be very important. Because up until that time, we didn't have that. And there's no question that for some people, that was really important. Again, thinking it was like the carrot and the stick. That's the metaphor that I've always thought of in terms of truancy when we're looking at the practices. It's the carrot and the stick. We look to get involved, getting the youngsters involved as much as possible. Why aren't you enjoying school? And what are we gonna do to turn that around? The carrot or the stick. And the stick is more at the high school level, but it is legal ramifications. Okay, so what parents knew was that the letter didn't mean much. So we realized in Franklin County, we needed to be doing something that was gonna bring in the state's attorney's office. So we started meeting with Jim Hughes and saying that, okay, if we're gonna be serious about this, and we wanna be serious about it, and you need to be serious about it, because in statute, it's all over the place, that your kids could be breaking the law, it's gonna be referred to the state's attorney's office, and unless you get involved, well, what are we gonna do? So reluctantly, the state attorney's office did get involved, but then realized we're talking about many schools in Franklin County, and how are they gonna start providing for every school in Franklin County? And that's pretty tough, and it is a tall order. We're talking about Richford, Enosburg, MBU, and then VFA Fairfax, and VFA St. Albans. So we're talking a lot of schools. Are they gonna be dedicating individual lawyers, or is it Jim himself? That was gonna be problematic. So what we developed here in Franklin County was what we called the Truancy Intervention Panel, the TIP. The TIP is made up of educators, usually special ed coordinators, administrators, principals, people in Indian education, like myself. We do have folks from DCF. The Assistant Director of DCF, Jen Harris, is on the TIP, as well as folks from Restorative Justice, and we have people from NCSS. The NCSS piece is becoming more and more prevalent, and that's going to be important in a couple of minutes. So we're talking about all of these agencies, education, but now more and more social service agencies. And what's the one that's at the table that we've never had at the table? The state's attorney. All right, so we have Jim Hughes at the table for the TIP. Well, what is this TIP and what does it do? Again, Truancy Intervention Panel. We're a group that come together, and our mandate, so to speak, is to take the most difficult cases in the county, and those are referred to us. So the process is one where the referrals come from the schools. Let's say it was referrals coming from MBU. I'm the contact in the Missisquoi School District. So people get the referral to me, I bring it to the TIP, and I have counterparts throughout the county, and that's the way we do it. At the TIP level, we take a packet that literally is like this, because what we have now are folks who are keeping the data, so we can tell you that in SWAN, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, yes, there've been letters, but then we looked at all the other interventions that have been tried. Yes, we tried bringing in NCSS, we tried bringing in a restorative justice, we've tried a lot of different strategies. We're at a point we don't know what to do. We've tried everything that we think we can do and now help. And what we have to do is ascertain whether or not people have really done a good job. you know, and whether they've been thorough. If they haven't, we're gonna send it back to the school. And we're gonna ask the principal perhaps to come in and meet with us so we can figure out what exactly is going on. Because in some cases, it hasn't been spelled out well enough. I mean, there is a process here and it's several pages and people have to fill it out and we should have a good idea what's going on with the child. So if it's good and we do have that sense, we decide whether that's a case that's gonna be accepted by the TIP. If it is, what do we have going for us? Well, first of all, it's having the state's attorney who's at the table. So if we need the stick as well as the carrot, we have that, all right? But what we also have, and this is more the carrot piece, we have a countywide truancy specialist. And this person, if the person is good at what she does, that person can be a crackerjack. The first person we ever hired for this position was someone named Laurel Chen. She was absolutely phenomenal. And as I often say, if you've got someone who's highly skilled and is charismatic, is not going to represent a threat to parents. I remember Laurel saying, look, I'm 22 years old, like 23 years old, I go into a home. Parents have every right to say, well, who are you? Are you married? Do you have kids? What's your deal? And in those minutes, you establish whether or not people are going to find you okay and whether you have any kind of credibility. With her, she did. We're able to do that. We're able to give the truancy specialist a caseload usually of anywhere between 12, 15, up to 20 youngsters. We started getting so many referrals at the TIP level that we said, okay, we're gonna have a TIP specialist at the primary and we're gonna have a TIP specialist at the secondary level. We had somebody who was actually working out of here. Their home base was MDU. It wasn't because MDU needed it per se. That person was to work in all the high schools. So we had a full-time person at the primary level and the secondary level, it wasn't as much. Now you might say, that sounds weird. It should be the other way around. And we made that change because, yeah, it's at the secondary level that the referrals were really coming, a lot more than they were at the primary. So we had these folks on board. One of the most important things that we do, and we continue to do, is tracking, is having the data so that we understand why this is an issue and therefore what is it that we need to do. In some cases, people would say, well, this is a family that needs group work. They actually need family therapy because there are all kinds of power struggles going on. And power struggles going on at home and, you know, families that are throwing up their hand, mom and dad, they don't know what to do. And they're really engaged in these power struggles so that, can we do something like that? Can we say that a therapeutic piece can be there? Absolutely. So at times that is the intervention of choice. And it might actually be what people would consider therapy. But other times it's not. It really is having someone who's got the skill set to be able to go in and realize that, you know what, this is simply going into the home and making sure the child has an alarm clock that works because mom and dad are at work and they work third shift. And the bottom line is the child has to get herself up. And if she doesn't, well, she doesn't get to school and it's an alarm clock. Now that sounds silly, but it's not. And it can be that simple, and yet that has been, for the particular family, an issue. So it's dealt with at that level. Now what's happened, it's interesting. Educators started the TIP, and this was an initiative really started by educators, and then as much as possible, we brought in other social service agencies and personnel from all over the county. But it was educators who really, you know, took the lead with truancy and with the truancy issue. Yet, in terms of funding the position, we were having difficulties. I remember at one point we came to this different schools, and we approached the superintendents about acting up, and they did. And they acted up, I think for 1 year or 2 years, and we said, we're gonna need to show you the efficacy of what we're doing. We're gonna need to be able to show you that we're being really effective, so that if we come back in a couple of years, we wanna be able to show you that it's worked. What's happened is that NCSS came to the table and said they figured out a funding mechanism whereby they would be able to fund the TIP specialists. So that it was going to be NCSS funded rather than through the school, rather than going to the superintendents. And that's what happened. Okay, so the position became something through NCSS. And it continues to be through NCSS. And frankly, what's happened is that NCSS, in a show of its own sense of ownership and for their funding mechanisms, it's important to be able to show that when the person is working on truancy issues, there really is a therapeutic piece. So it becomes something that needs to be dealt with therapeutically for NCSS to be able to get its own reimbursements. What happens is that the school enjoys less and less of an influence. We feel that it's gotta be something that's a shared responsibility. The upshot is that right now, as we speak, the TIP has not been functioning for the last several months. We had somebody in the position, in fact, Jack McCarthy. People know Jack had retired and became the truancy specialist in Franklin County, and I thought that was wonderful, and that he would be wonderful additions. As it turned out, in terms of what NCSS was looking for, in terms of skill sets, it just didn't work out the way we had hoped. When I say we, the educators sitting at the table. So Jack decided this really wasn't for him. And we've been really in a point of hiatus where we're meeting this coming Friday to determine next steps and determine how we're going to proceed. Now, if we can show that this has been effective, and the bottom line is we have been effective, we can start to show the data which shows the kids going back to school. And if we can be addressing this and addressing it successfully, then it's something we want to be able to continue. And it's going to behoove us to be able to go back to the table on Friday and figure out how we're going to do this. You know, and that, yes, the funding is always problematic. However, we're looking at what's in the best interest of young people in Franklin County. And if we have a model that is working, we want to be able to continue that. And that's what we're looking at. So we're looking at this PIP specialist, you know, at the county level. Fortunately, at MVU, MVU also has its own truancy specialist. And again, there are not too many schools that I'm familiar with in the state of Vermont that have gone in that direction. It's a credit to MVU that folks here, Dan, Jay, others saw the need and said, okay, what are we gonna do? So it's a contract with NCSS in providing this person. And we'll see how that goes. We now have, I think, about 2 or 3 different people, Melissa and 2, yeah. So we'll see how that works. The model at the county level is a good one in the sense that we've got the representation from the state's attorney's office. So whenever we need, from affidavits to be written up, whatever we need that's going to involve DCF, and DCF does come into the picture. I mean, there becomes an issue of neglect when we're talking about 25 days, 30 days, 35 days. We're no longer talking about 5, 10, 15. We're talking a lot of days. And it's no longer okay to simply say, well, it's a power struggle, and therefore I don't want to engage my job. We've got to be able to figure out some strategies that will work. And that's what we look to do. So we look to take it and move from, again, that sense of the prevention to intervention to the legal piece, the hammer. As much as we don't like the idea of the hammer, some cases it's the best strategy that we can use. And that's where we're at in terms of truancy in Missisquoi. I mean, Dan and Jay and others here, you know, deal with this every single day. There's not a day that goes by when there isn't some, you know, issues around kids who just aren't coming. Or the issues today are a lot of issues around tardiness. So kids that are tardy, that come to school, but then have figured out that if I come for 1 class or 2 classes, I'm marked in, and then they take off. So it's now truancy, and it's been extended to tardiness. But I think, you know, schools are on top of this. We deal with it, and we work cooperatively, and that's the best way, is understanding that this is not something we can do in isolation. It's not something we can do in a vacuum. We have to be able to work together. And those schools that are willing to work together, like our schools, we're really looking at, when we talk about best practices in truancy, and there are best practices, we're using them, the 5, 10, 15 day, bringing in the outside agencies. This is all state-of-the-art stuff that we're doing in Missisquoi, in the school district here. We're using the state-of-the-art. There are a lot of other interventions. Let me just share with you. In one school, again, this is a secondary school in New York City. So the issue was what? They had a large problem. They didn't know what to do. They spoke to students. They brought in the kids and they had a discussion. What the school wound up doing was buying washers and dryers. Kids were saying, and I kid you not, that a lot of kids were having to leave because they were having to do laundries, and if they did it after school, it was like incredible wait at the laundromat. If we could bring in washers and dryers, the school did it. The school brought in washers and dryers. Now, you could be sure there were people saying, well, what the hell, what are we doing now? I mean, washers and dryers. You know what? It turned the issue around, it turned the problem around. There is no problem at this particular school. It's unbelievable. This isn't just over 1 month, 2, 3. This has been now tracked over 2 years. And so what we've learned from that is the idea of bringing the student voice and getting the kids involved in terms of, hey, what's going on? Why is this an issue for you? And here at MVU, for instance, we try to get the kids involved from the onset. We get kids involved from day one, wherever we can, because we realize that we can come up with any strategy. We don't have the kids on board, it's not gonna work. Yeah, no.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay, actually I have like 3 parts here. First of all, if we've been doing it, like you said, we
Yeah.
had been doing it, it was really successful, do you have the measurements for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the measurements if you're going into it again, how effective it is. And number 2 is, MVU has their own person who's a truancy specialist. Are there different sets of measurements for that? That's different from TIP with that person?
It's pretty much similar. It's similar, I thought you were gonna say, you know, what's the difference? MVU has its own. The big difference is what I said in terms of the legal piece. But in terms of the data, no, MVU is collecting the same data.
And then the third one,
Yeah,
is kind of where
yeah,
you were
yeah,
going to, is if we're gonna reinstate the TIP and have that working, how's that gonna work with all the other high schools that don't have a truancy specialist and MVU does? I'm just thinking in terms of budget.
Yeah, so what we do, you know, here is that we've got the person, and the person at NVU comes to the tip, she's on the tip, she's part of the tip, because the problems that she's dealing with at NVU, she cannot deal with by herself. I mean, it gives NVU a really good start at this in terms of having its own truancy specialist, but it's still that piece at the county level in terms of having people like, again, from restorative justice to DCF, having those people at the table on a monthly basis and being able to go there, that's huge. I think it gives MVU a step up, there's no question, in terms of the commitment MVU's made. So you're basically saying, so let's see the data, let's see the success.
Well, there's more prevention too, I think,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we have someone who's able to work with kids and interact with students before it gets to the level of a referral to the countywide panel.
That's the goal, that we want to see at MVU, the numbers being referred to the tip, that the issues being resolved here. Now this, at this point, is only anecdotal, but I think I can say that that's exactly what's going on. Now, we've only had 2 people, and first year, I think, was very successful, Melissa, that first year, and now we have a new person in. So that's one of the things we need to look at is consistency, and hopefully we'll see that consistency. But that's a really good question, you know, in terms of, I think the initial thing is looking at the commitment that MVU has made, you know, around the issue, recognizing it is an issue.
It'd be important that the other, if we're gonna be all involved in Franklin County, it
Yeah.
would be important that the other high schools or the elementary schools have their own.
And that's what we're looking at, yeah, and every school in Franklin County. So you think in terms of the school districts, what we've thought in terms of is that each district, it would have its own.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because again, this is not our issue in
Yeah.
isolation, trust me. This is an issue all over the state. And I think, again, we've been really proactive in this in terms of trying to, you know, get on this before it becomes a crisis.
Well, and the good news is you'll have some of these measurements to make it work
Yeah,
with the rest
and
of the schools.
that baseline is so important, and we have it, especially here with the Raleigh.
That's great.
Other questions? Yeah.
This has been really eye-opening for me. Until Dawn and Dan had brought it up to us before. When you talked about, was it more of a problem, you know, back then or today? I don't ever remember it being a problem going in high school, and I didn't see it with my kids. I'm thinking, you know, Huck Finn, you know, they're looking for different fishing holes so they don't get caught by the truancy officer. And then, you know, I see you come in, I say, man, you can't be a very good truancy officer. How are you gonna catch somebody with a broken leg?
That's true. It's true. Yeah, well, you know, but we realize that your kids weren't involved, but it's like saying dropout. You know, we don't remember it as dropout as the issue that it was, but it involved, sometimes it was a bunch of other kids. But it's been around. Let's say the issue of school dropout, and I was dealing with dropout in 1990, I can remember, and issues we were working on, you know, good things, successful things. But today, the issue, when we deal with the opioid issues, it's unbelievable what we deal with. Anything else? I know we've gone over. Any other questions?
I don't.
Ty.
So, I guess the first question is there still a legal dropout age, and is that actually happening?
Yep.
Yeah.
There is, okay.
With parents' permission, right? Parents' permission?
Yeah, it's still 16 with parents' permission. There's been talk of raising it to 18, but it hasn't had any legs really in the legislature.
16 years old, with parents say so.
And then, so at the MBU level, it's what I'm familiar with right now.
Yeah.
Is truancy, the letter comes out if you miss the same class 5 times, not 5 days of school, correct?
Oh, no, wait, you're saying if you miss 5?
Of the same classes.
No, it can be 5, it could be 5 of one class of another. No, that's not what we look at in terms of the indicator, in terms of how we're defining. Again, you know, think of, when we're talking about the chronic absenteeism, it's any reason, any excuse, it could be any part of the day, any class, you know, morning, afternoon, it doesn't really matter. So what are you getting at that maybe that,
Well, when I got the letter last year, I made the phone call because my son wasn't missing school unexcused, and I wanted to make sure that, do the right things, right?
Right.
And it was explained to me how I just asked you the question, that if you missed one particular class 5 times, that letter came out. It wasn't missing 5 days, it wasn't missing, like you just said, no matter what.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where I was going with this was if a student has a whatever appointment and it falls, how, I mean, I just got the letter last week because my son was concussed earlier in the hockey season. We got the letter. I mean, that's how, it's a waste of time, effort, and money to get the letter when they're excused and the issue has already been fixed with the administration, the home, and the child on a case by case.
And I think that's the thing we have to take a look at, is on a case by case, because we do sometimes with parents have that communication, and you do know that the kid will come on in with a doctor's note, and there's other times where the parent will call in and say, my kid is, they're sick today and they're home again. And you get that in that, you know, every other day or 1 to 2 days a week without a doctor's note, because they may not have transportation to get the kid to the urgent care or to the doctor or to see somebody. You know, so we do have to take a look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, you know, I'm not arguing anything. I'm just like, you know, how can we take, especially, just use my example, where it's, in my opinion, it's very minor compared to what a lot of the cases you see. How can I save that position, time and effort on mine, to put to something that they could actually, you know, more important.
Well, that really starts with, again, is communication. If the communication is there, even though we say MBU is a large school, people here know the individual kids. If you're communicating regularly with the school, and the school knows who you are, the school knows the child, in most of those cases, it's not an issue.
Okay.
It really is. I mean, is that safe to say? It's yeah. You know, where the parent is genuinely reaching out, you know, and saying, especially if they're saying help, you know, I need the help, then that relationship is being formed right off. All we ever look for is for that parent to come into the school. We can get them in the school, we're 99% of the way there. It's getting folks into the school at times.
I'm just gonna make mine
really
super quick. But thank you for clarifying the fact that at the elementary level, that you do take concern in this, because I know for the past couple months when it's been on our agenda that in the future we'll be talking about the truancy, I've been opening my ears more and listening to what parents have, what they're saying, that they can't get their kid to school at their younger age, they're having difficulty. So for me, it's good to hear that you do start that, you do have them come into school, you do have a discussion with the counselors and the teachers with the kids.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Guidance counselors we've had, at the elementary level, guidance counselors, homeschool coordinators at the elementary level, who've been homeschool coordinators for years. That would be something that they would be dealing with. That's why I'm saying that we've been ahead of this in a lot of ways, a lot more than a lot of other school districts that I deal with. But the issue is there, and absolutely. But just know that no one's burying their heads in the sand or anything like that. We deal with it. And I'll get a call from elementary principals regularly, in terms of, so how are we gonna come at this? And usually it's through a collaborative process. We work together and we're gonna figure it out, and we do, most times. Well, thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, so next presentation is the MBU administration update.
So in early December, we had a visit from some educators from South Pacific Island nations, including Fiji, Kiribati, Tuvalu, Tonga, and Samoa. And they came in a partnership with the Vermont Council on World Affairs, who was working with a national agency, and they came and visited us for a few hours on December 9th to learn about our science programming. They were very curious about our STEM fair in particular and the work that we do with that in our classrooms. And we met with them in our makerspace, and we talked a little bit about our research methods course, which is a new offering we have this year where students are really diving into the independent research project at a higher level. So there are some pictures from their visit. It was a wonderful visit. On December 11th, we had our consultants from PLL, which is Partnerships for Literacy and Learning. They've been visiting us throughout the year, working with our 7 through 9 English teachers, and they're focusing their work and support around writing and increasing engagement in writing.
On December 18th, we had the middle school choir and strings and band perform, and on the 19th, we had the high school choir and band perform as well. For those of you who may have attended both, you'll realize the high school one went a little bit longer than the middle school one, but both Danielle Turner and Aaron Garson did a fabulous job with those. The Operation Happiness Drives went on in early December this year for a couple of weeks. I would say that overall the foodstuffs that we collected was down. Overall, I think it was down for all the elementary schools as well. I think it's just kind of a sign of the times and where we're at. But we still collected, I would say 3/4 of a busload full, and we're able to take that down to the Swanton Complex where it's distributed from there. We also do an annual coat drive as well, where I would say we probably collect, Mr. Hartman, would you say close to 230 jackets, coats for kids, where we, I would say a good, not all of them, but I know probably 20 to 30 kids here at MBU that, somebody, an adult may know, be like, hey, come on in, take a look around and see what you can find to help kind of outfit some students and their families, believe it or not. Because you'd be surprised the number of times you're going through it and a kid would be like, oh, my mom could really use this, or my younger brother could really use this. And you literally just kind of give them a bag to fill up and take home. So it really kind of helps out. This year, MBU is kind of honored to have 5 University of Vermont student teachers this year. We have 2 English language arts and 3 social studies teachers. I think they are looking to expand their outreach beyond Chittenden County a little bit, and in their words, to kind of give a little bit more of a real world experience for their student teachers. So we're kind of excited to have them. And on December 18th, the Middle School Student Council as well, Lori Kilberry took approximately 49 students and up to the Franklin County Rehab Center, gave them blankets, sang carols, really kind of spent a morning with them. And in Lori Kilberry's words, if you just seeing the reaction from the students, kids that you wouldn't always associate as being, that way, said it was absolutely just heartwarming to see them sit down, talk with a resident there, give a blanket, have a long conversation. She thought it was absolutely fantastic. So. Cool.
Below that, we've included some enrollment data for the variety of flexible pathways that we have available here at MBU. We want to put the presentation from the Northwest Technical Center into context with the other flexible pathways that are available. So we have information for you about the number of students in early college this year, our dual enrollment courses. Concurrent courses are the ones that happen here on site. I included our level 2 agri-science courses, which is our 3 main strands: resource management, agricultural mechanics, and animal science. I just included the level 2 courses because those are the larger credit-bearing courses. They have integrated credit. It's more of a pathway than just taking a course. Our work-based learning numbers included the Northwest Technical Center numbers. The number of students at our alternative programs, Connect, which is our alternative program that's off-site at the Church of the Nativity. Field studies we've heard about from their presentation recently. Number of students at Vermont Adult Learning, and we actually send 2 students to Cold Hollow Technical Center for their forestry program as well. So we have taken advantage of the opportunities available to our students beyond just what's at Northwest.
Jen, do the Cold Hollow students have to get their own transportation?
Yes, they do.
And the last one, you can see some upcoming events. We next, the 16th, which is just next week, next Thursday, we have our STEM fair. I hope everybody has the opportunity to come on out and see that. It is absolutely huge. It's in Commons, down in the theater as well. It really is a great evening put on by the science department in Rich Valley. So if you have the opportunity, by all means, come on and see it. It's great. Just some other things, dance team competition. We have the All-State Music Festival. Students going to that at CBU. Just a reminder that on January 20th, we have a district in-service here. Part of each building will have an in-service. We'll have an in-service here, so there's no students that day. Following that, we'll start our annual registration process for classes for next year. So we're already off and running on that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to new business. The first one is a signed letter of agreement.
We, I think, should probably talk about it in executive session. We have an employee, we used to have a side letter agreement about supplementing the pay of folks on military leave. And we have a proposal from the association to do that again for an individual. So since it's about an individual, I think we probably should do it since we are going into executive session. But we will want a decision when you come out of executive session about whether you want to authorize the board chair to sign that side letter or not.
Okay. And second thing for new business is central office lease agreement.
So we did receive the lease agreement from our current landlord. Laura and Chris and I went through it, Pierrette and I went through it as well, with the old and the new leases to make sure we were comfortable with, because the lease we had before was a 15-year lease and there would be little updates. So we have a new 3-year lease with an option in the 3rd year to non-renew should the board choose to do that. Those were things that were important. And the rest of it is pretty straightforward in terms of the language that we've been living with for the past 15 years versus what we have now. And Becky, what the new monthly amount is increasing by how much?
By about $250 a month, or $3,000 a year. If you look just from the increase from last year to this, it's about 8%, but we haven't seen an increase for about 4 years. So if you break that down, we're looking at about 2% per year.
Is that really going to stay for the 3 years?
I believe that it stays at that cost for the 3 years, or is there?
No, you can stay for the 3 years.
What's that?
Are you asking, are they gonna stay for 3 years?
And I'm asking if our rate's gonna stay
Oh.
at that level for
Sorry.
3 years, or will there be another increase in year 2 or 3?
Yes, we're,
It
yes.
says on the same term,
36.
In the same terms?
So,
it says there could be an adjustment in monthly rental commensurate with increase in property taxes. So we would negotiate that annually if there was a significant increase in property taxes. It hasn't increased from year to year for a long time, so we do not expect that.
I guess I would just ask if there is an increase next year that we know that
We know
might
about
factor into the decision whether we want to look at having a different office.
but this is a security deposit, which
And then my favorite is
usually we do that.
parking lot.
Yes, that's mine.
Yes, we did work through all that with the landlord. It was not something that was, it was, as we've talked about here in previous meetings, it was prohibitive for us to bear that cost, and we didn't feel that it was appropriate for us to bear the cost of parking lot. And so, and at this time, he's not in a position to do it on his own. So, as in terms of paving. But we have been in a lot of discussion and negotiations around the changing of the layout of the parking lot and the frequency with which it is resurfaced.
Yeah, and I know that I proposed paving, but I figured probably wasn't gonna happen, but, you know, a few $100s worth of gravel would save a few front ends on the vehicles that live there.
Yeah.
So
And
I
he-
hope,
he
I
did
hope
do
that
that.
we
This-
can, and I'll leave that to you, but certainly from my point of view, I think he needs to be told whether it's now or in the spring. He needs to improve it.
On top of that too, what about the wood chunks?
We have been in discussions with him about that. We do have a plan for it. And a lot of it has to do with the, you're gonna have to help me, but the stormwater runoff situation that he has, he can't just remove grass, impervious surface, without having an increase in,
Water flow?
right, thank
There's a
you.
ditch right there.
So we have a plan to increase green space in some areas so that we can decrease in others and perhaps get rid of a couple of barriers and switch what the barriers look like.
And so what's the time frame on that he's gonna make a decision?
We had a discussion about it and we will be talking, I mean, it's winter now, so we'll have to revisit it with him about, you know, when he plans on doing that. Some of it has to do with him getting permission for regrading in certain, along the side of the building.
Yeah.
So should we approve the lease before he does that? Be good faith tenants, or should we say,
Well, this lease has been delayed since August.
right,
And the lease itself never has had anything around the parking lot in it. I mean, we feel comfortable that this is a pretty standard lease and it protects us in our use of space and is appropriate. Those other pieces are things that we continue to negotiate, and instead of this, you know, it is not a 15-year lease, it's a 3-year lease. So we have some decisions to make around that within the 3 years.
Has the school attorney reviewed this contract?
I do not give it to the school attorney. It's the same lease that we've been under for the last 15 years.
I mean, it just looks like the lease came from the leaseor because all the burden, if you read through it, all comes on the tenant. And I'm sure that's probably the way it was before as well. There's just a few things. One of the things that I don't like is if we get into a legal battle, if we lose, we've got to pay attorney's fees too, and it says something reasonable. That's not very clear to me what reasonable is to me and what reasonable is to someone else. I'd just feel more comfortable if our attorney reviewed the contract to see if, are we putting ourselves, or have we been putting ourselves, you know, at risk.
Is that something the board wants me to do before you approve the lease? It is, we meet one more time before it's due.
Good morning.
I have to to be careful as a property owner, but I agree with Peter. I agree with Peter. And 15 years ago was a different time. And again, as a property owner, if I had a parking lot like that, I'd be embarrassed. I'd have taken care of it in August or July before somebody got to me. I think we really need to scrutinize it.
Especially if they want to keep you. If they want to keep you, you take care of it.
So is the favor of the board to have this go before the attorney, or do we want to move on it tonight? We have two who want to wait, so does the rest of the board feel the same way, or?
I don't feel any need to wait, but I also don't feel any need, like you said, we're meeting again, so I don't feel any need to say we have to do it tonight either. That's.
No preference.
I kind of feel bad that it feels like we're kind of, something like a decision on the lease for 3 years that you felt comfortable doing. I feel kind of bad that we got you doing some more work about it, but I also can understand what some people are thinking that as a landowner that you might need to look at the lease again from 15 years ago. I know most leases are in favor of the landlord, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Commercial leases are almost all of them are typically in favor of the landowner.
That's
I
right.
mean, the tenant's responsibility is usually the entire building. And like there's a part in here that says that you have to put it back the way it was. That's really common in any commercial leasing. I mean, that's, whereas residential leasing, it's a lot different. Typically, you move into a existing structure and you leave that existing structure.
But the issues that we've brought up more than once have been skirted.
I don't know if I would say they've been skirted, because I feel like the conversations, from what I'm hearing, the conversations have been had, and the landlord is financially unable to do.
Well, the paving, but
The paving.
he did regrade this fall.
Right.
And put gravel on the, on the parking lot, and he has addressed all the issues that we asked to be addressed. The bigger issue is around those posts, and, and again, we're on camera in an open session, so I don't like to talk too much about leases on camera, but, he is the property owner, and he has concerns about the grass and his own permits for the use of that space and stormwater, and so we have worked out compromise that we anticipate will work for both parties.
Is it written down?
Hmm?
Is it written down? That compromise?
No, not yet.
I say we have our lawyers look at it. Or lawyer look at it. It's not gonna hurt. Like Don was saying, 15 years ago was a different time as well.
How much will it cost to have the lawyer look at it?
Depends on how long it takes them to review and how long the communication, $100.
I'm only leery because on the select board, we've signed contracts before. For that same reason, we thought, this is a pretty simple contract. Why pay an attorney to look at it? And then we ended up getting burned. It was a Canadian company, and all legal battles would have to be fought in Canada, so it doesn't hurt to have. It does cost some money sometimes, and I hate to hire lawyers myself, but sometimes I just think it's the prudent thing to do.
So if everyone's in agreement, we will table this until the next meeting, after Julie has a chance to contact our lawyers.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, old business, check warrants.
Okay. Accounts payable, we have check warrants, total out there is $2,878,482.20. Accounts payable itself is $843,884.01. Payroll checks are $67,342.14. Payroll disbursements is $1,452,926.18. And the deductions on payroll would be $514,329.87, again to the total of $2,878,482.20.
So I'll entertain a motion to accept check warrants as read.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting check warrants as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0. Financial report.
Distributed a copy of report basically through the end of December. The first 2 pages deal with revenues, the rest of the pages deal with expenditures. Since the last report you saw, the working budget for revenues has been included, so you do have numbers now for comparison. At this point in the year, we've received probably about 75% of our annual revenue. We have gotten all our property taxes from the 3 towns. We have received 2/3 of our state aid money. There'll be one more payment at the end of April. But the rest of the money will be some small grants, the littler amounts of money. So that's on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, your working budget has been there. I know that the board has had questions about, getting some information on the chart of accounts, what the different numbers mean. Laura's working on that, and I think we'll have a cheat sheet, if you will, to help interpret the account codes and identify what you're looking at when you're reviewing these. I don't know if you had any specific questions.
I have some questions on the revenue side.
Yep.
MVU tuition reduction, that means we're getting $156,000 less than we thought we were gonna get?
No, the tuition reduction has to do with your ag program.
Still what?
Your ag program.
Okay, so that's the ag program?
Yeah, that's the ag
that
grant.
comes in,
Yeah.
okay, good. And what about the MVU prior year carryover?
That's a number that we budgeted for. We are reviewing our draft audits for FY19, so we will have a clearer number for that in another month or 2.
Because I've been asking about that since October.
We had just been started to receive.
And I knew the first response was appropriate, expected that if you do the audit, you really don't want to put anything out there. But the audit's done and you're looking at that.
Right, and the audits are not done. Like I said, we just received our first preliminary drafts in the last couple of weeks. So
But
that.
the auditor's done his or her work, and now we're back with the drafts.
Right, yeah, they've done their field work.
All right.
I think so. We're working together. Okay. So, in a nutshell, we're looking pretty decent. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, we're still working on encumbering the expenses, so we don't have like a projected carryover at this point.
Yeah, Laura was saying too, the revenues are not in cement yet, so.
We have some concerns about special ed revenue, if it's going to come in the way we had budgeted.
Yeah.
But we're still too early in the year. We've only received our initial advance at the beginning of the year and submitted for one quarter, one trimester, if you will. So there's still some money out there.
She was cautious on putting any revenue numbers out there in the beginning, so we're getting closer.
Now, we're gonna have to have we have to know before we finalize our budget what our carryover's gonna be,
I
or
think
not?
we typically have a year in between, so when we finalize the audits, we'll be using those as our carryover
So it's 2
numbers,
years
not
out.
trying
It
to
is
estimate
2
what's
years
gonna
out.
happen at the end
2
of this
years
year.
out. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, on to other business, superintendent's newsletter.
Well, I won't take too much time. I do want to highlight, there are pictures of the concert, the high school concert, which was absolutely wonderful. Unfortunately, we have our budget meeting next week during the STEM fair. So, yeah, that's unfortunate that we won't be able to do both things. But we did have some wonderful holiday events in all of our schools, but I did have some pictures from my attendance at that. My highlights really are the fact that the legislative session is starting. I had a webinar the other day where we were discussing the bills that we can expect to come before the legislative session. I think Kate Webb, who's the House Ed Chair, saying it's a year to stabilize existing initiatives. I hope that that comes true. Because, you know, I was just speaking with Joyce today about the lead bill that they gave us last year as a present. And, you know, the other bills that come along that just people don't understand the amount of time and cost to schools when people just decide, let's do this thing. So it would be nice if we were able to take Act 173, the special ed funding bill, and make minor adjustments to it, rather than either reverse course completely or start a new thing. Act 166, the universal pre-K law, we've been, for years, there have been bills proposed about some fixes to that law in its implementation. We expect that to come up in the session now. Our school organizations are really trying to see if we can have a school construction aid bill that goes through and successfully. I think just introducing it and really clearly articulating the need in our state for the stewardship of our buildings and the fact that that really is a crisis in the state and across the country. But in particular, Vermont has not had school construction aid for more than 10 years, and it is a problem. So we are positively advocating for that.
Julie, before you go on, can you
Yep.
back up? The equalized pupils, you talked
Oh,
about
yes.
wanting to, they're looking at recalculating or they're changing that.
Yes.
I heard them talking about that on the radio the other day, and they were talking about, I didn't understand the whole thing, but large schools and small schools, and to benefit both of those, but there's gonna be winners and losers, right?
Oh, there always are.
So it's like, that's what I'm just curious, are we gonna end up on the losing side of that?
Well,
or-
it's hard to tell. So we did just have a release of, Tammy Colby is the researcher at the University of Vermont that did the weighting study for the legislature. So she will be reporting to the legislature on her findings, what other states do, what Vermont does, difference between categorical aid to schools to address costs versus weighting through equalized pupils the way we do for certain things. We pay for in one way, certain things we pay for in other ways. So Dawn and I actually were both at a presentation she gave as sort of an overview. When I got the full report, which is just 120-something pages of light reading, and I actually understand equalized pupils, so the poor legislature is in trouble. She told us that we would all run to the appendix to see where we come out, and I might have done that. There are so many different models she's putting out there. There are so many different, and then what she puts out there may be entirely different from what the legislator chooses to do. I think we sort of came out evenly in the wash, from what I would say. We're rural, we have 40% poverty essentially in all of our schools. We have not a tremendously large number of English language learners. I didn't see anything there about state place students or students in custody, but there are a number of measures where I think we're sort of in the middle of the pack. Excuse me, I'm cold. So I don't know that we're really going to be a big loser or a big winner in the models I saw presented, but it's really early going. And obviously, that's something we'll be paying close attention to. Yes?
I kind of have a follow-up question to that because thank you for bringing that up. I meant to ask you, so the decrease that we've had in our count, is that due to the reconfiguration of the count, or was that number that you had the same as was it calculated the same way as it was last year?
So right now, the way there's students, how many kids are enrolled,
Right.
and that's a number. Equalized pupils are weighted students.
Right, I got that.
Right? It has not changed since the 90s.
The formula hasn't changed?
No.
Oh, okay, so that wasn't a changed formula. That
No.
means we've had that kind of a decrease?
Ours has been, this county has sort of steadily decreased over time. We're not one of the highest decrease areas in the state.
But we hadn't been decreasing.
No,
which is
right
why I was
now, we're
really
pretty
surprised.
stable. I'm knocking on Formica here. Our last equalized pupil count, actually, I think we increased by 1 kid.
Oh, I thought
So-
it said we'd gone down 8% somewhere, but I read that somewhere.
Right, but the numbers
Probably
have changed. I think we're down 4 students, or
Right.
4 FT, or 4
Right.
Which
equalized,
isn't
whatever you
much,
want to call
but I
them.
thought I read somewhere
It
it
keeps
was down
going up and
8%.
down.
Oh,
So
okay, so that's
we're
not the
fairly stable compared to other areas of the state, but we're not growing. But demographically, Franklin County is growing by a very small percentage, like less than 1% or 1%, but we are growing as a county. So,
I just thought I saw somewhere that said we had decreased
somewhere,
6%.
We've had years where we've lost
Didn't you
some
say-
significant percentages, but it has started to taper
I'm
off.
talking about this year, our budget.
The numbers have been changing from the state. They have been
we've
changing.
had various drafts.
Every 2 weeks or so. but-
Oh, okay, so maybe I
Take the
saw one
best
of the
one.
other ones, okay.
They haven't,
They got me for the next one.
we don't get to just pick the best one.
Because I saw that, I thought, what?
Yeah, I think if you find Highgate going up, you Swanson going down, doesn't that average out, really, as far as the counts?
And it's done over time, it's an
Right,
average
yeah.
over time.
So you got that on the backside in terms of which one's going up and which one's going
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, that's an example.
The reason why the equalized pupil weighting study had to occur is because it was written into Act 173, that we would be looking at that and looking at how we could mitigate some of these issues as a state when we are calculating how schools receive special ed funding under a block grant model. So if schools have a lot of high poverty, should there be a different weighting there? Should they get more special ed money? And, you know, there isn't a causal factor there. There can be a correlative factor, but that's not necessarily something you want to reward either. So there's a lot of interesting conversation about how they should, and you shouldn't be making decisions like this at the state level based on fear either. So I think essentially we're in a pretty good spot where we are sort of in the middle of the pack for this issue.
One thing I would say that the lady who wrote this report, I think she's brilliant.
She is, yeah.
Brilliant, and if you can get a copy of it, it must be online somewhere.
Oh, I
know
have
we're
a
talking-
copy.
We're talking about it tomorrow night at a meeting in Montpelier. You know, the one thing I'm going to do, and maybe it's because I'm a political junkie, but I would encourage everybody, find out how you can contact your legislators in person or online or whatever. And tell them they really need to stay on top of this. Many of them are going to tell you, well, I'm not on the education committee. You know what? Education committee's not going to have a whole lot to do about this. It's going to be the finance committee that's going to deal with that. Some of you know people on the finance committee. I don't feel that. The thing, and I agree with Julie that I don't see us as big winners or losers, but I know that in the last 3 hours, the legislative session, things can flip quickly. So my message is going to be, please keep us up to date.
Yes.
And we'll be watching, not threatening, but watching, because, you know, there's a belief that there are a lot of poor people, city people, urban poor, even in Vermont. Well, I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of rural poor too. And so my message, Randy Brock's on finance, other people I know in finance is, you know, if you represent us in Franklin County or Franklin or Swanton, please keep your eye on the ball when it comes to what poverty is going to, what's going to determine poverty. Because somebody in Swanton that's poor is just as poor as if they live in South Burlington. South Burlington does have 4 people, but other towns, so I think this is Act 46, when it started, looked like a sleepy little bill. By the time we got to our committee, it was a disaster waiting, I thought, but beyond that. But this has the potential to be another major changes, because, and I'm gonna pick on Peter because right here, but the little town of Franklin, it's a nice little town. They take a pride in their school, their community, the Memorial Day parade, and they probably do for families that are in need in some low-key way, all right? They shouldn't be punished for that. And I think something like this has the ability, with just a few adjustments, to kind of overlook some of the demands. The special ed one you talked about, the last thing I got was, now after all the wisdom of legislature doing this, they're wondering if they should do a set aside of funds, so when 3 special ed kids come into a small school, the impact is going to be much more significant than if, for yourself, let's take Franklin and St. Albans City. St. Albans City get 3 more special ed kids, they can probably absorb it, maybe. Franklin, really going to bite, it's going to bite all of us, because Franklin is not a standalone school, thank goodness. So some of these things look very innocent. So I just would encourage people, talk to your legislators, let them know you're watching, that they represent Franklin County. But we can hope for the best. But anyway, I'm just impressed with that lady. She is really sharp, and
she is. I do have a copy. I'm happy to put it on the site for anyone who wants to look at it.
That would be good.
Again, it's pretty statistically dense, but I think she does a very nice job of explaining why certain things are cost drivers and why we need to pay attention to them. And one of the things, I do stay very engaged with the legislature and what's happening and what the progress of various bills are. Our organizations do that as well. I encourage you to read those things that come out from the Education Collaborative that the School Board Association is a part of, as well as Superintendent's Association. Next week, I can't believe it's next week already, I'll be spending the day with all statewide superintendents, and we will be having lunch and afternoon with the House and Senate Ed Committee members. We do this every year, and we talk about the things that are coming up, and we give them real-world examples of what the impact of their decisions have. We usually do that as counties, so we're sitting with people that represent us as a county, but we also speak more broadly about our concerns in education. And I've been very impressed with how well they listen to us. So I would echo what you say, and I will certainly reach out to you if there are times where it's pretty important to reach out to a local legislator about an issue. So should you want to do that, you have the information. And I guess that's it for me, because it's a lot. We have lots of wonderful updates, and I do have pictures, and at the very bottom, there are pictures of the Christmas holiday sales of the maple products from the ag.
Is that a school board meeting right back there, just saw? Right, back on the one? Is that a school board?
Yeah, could be. So please, I encourage you to look at this and ask any questions. But there we go. And I have to say, I got, some people got some good Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
Circa the ag program, so.
That's good.
Yeah, I went through it.
So,
Same
thank
with
you to
the same
them.
students we saw tonight.
Yeah, so we had those lollipops. They were so
They
good.
were so-
That's right.
they were-
Are they still selling them?
I don't imagine.
Okay, so future agenda items, always negotiations, always working on the budget. We still have more policies to go through. Don?
Okay. I think everybody received an email maybe weeks ago from Jay Cummings. Nobody remembers that?
I didn't get one.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I think I did get one.
It was about, did you people get it? Use some social media to brag about the success of MVU students. I don't know if people know Jay, he was a former school board member, and I can't believe I saw him, but I got it. Anyway,
I think I got it.
I thought everybody'd say, oh yeah, but I would like to invite him to come to a board meeting and share his thoughts of what he put forward in his letter. So maybe you should see the letter before you decide if you want to do that. But was Jay on the board? No, Jay was not on the board meeting. But I think I thought he made some very good points. But I never heard any more, so I figured somebody responded or whatever. But it was not negative. In fact, as a parent, I thought he was pretty accurate in what he perceived as some things that maybe could be improved. So.
Well, it would be good to have him meet with administration,
And I thought probably that's what had happened, that
Right.
you were
I haven't
principals or
heard
somebody
anything.
had met with him, and that's why we didn't hear from it. So I thought,
I'd love to see if you could
yeah, I'll
forward
try to dig
that.
it up and get it to him.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Coming here,
Uh,
11/11/19.
I tried to be gentle tonight with the ag program at the tech center, but I'm really disappointed. I didn't sense they have really much interest in our ag program. And I don't know what, if anything, we can do to get them involved. Jen, you're smiling, but.
Well, I'm thinking about when that work was happening about 2 years ago. I think one of the reasons that we as an organization pulled back a little bit was that most of our programs are either 1 credit, 2 credits, or 3 credits, where the tech center programming is half-day programming. And for students from Enosburg or from St. Albans to come here for a course that might only meet 1 period, the logistics of that were challenging. To increase to a half-day program with the capacity that we have with space and personnel, it meant that a lot of our pre-tech offerings, so our middle school ag program, our intro to ag program, where we serve hundreds of students, those would be lost because you can only serve 16 students at a time in a half-day program. So I think part of the reason that didn't get a lot of traction was that preserving those middle school and grade 9 and 10 programs were really important to us.
So maybe it's to our advantage not to pursue it.
We can serve more students with the model we have right now rather than shifting to a half-day program where we're capped at 16 kids.
Do we have a
morning,
3-hour
16
program?
afternoon.
What's our 3-hour program?
So Resource Management 2 and Animal Science 2 are both 3 credits right now. They
So
meet
they
2
could
periods
do
one
something
day and 1 period the other day. But none of them are up to the half day that the Tech Center offers.
Thank you. I'm also curious what the Early Ed Association is doing on the early ed changes proposed. Is there a statewide effort amongst the early education people?
Yes, so the Building Bright Futures organization has been activated to collect feedback from a variety of stakeholders around the state to inform the legislature this year. Earlier in, I believe it was the end of October, beginning of November, locally there was a meeting that had providers who were, Act 166 providers, were invited to that through BBF, and I attended, as did the early childhood coordinator from Maple Run. And there are efforts to collect more feedback from the VCSEA has shared a link to an online survey. So those efforts are happening now to hear from people who've been doing the work, how it's going.
I hope your association is aggressive with the legislature, because I have scars all over my back from the organizations that didn't like that legislation in the beginning, many years ago, and they haven't gone away. So I would hope that, and I'm sure you are, people that, a word of caution, be organized and be aggressive. Don't fear to bend the ears of legislators, because there are people out there that I'm sure are doing it. Thank you.
I forwarded that email to Julie.
Okay.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Highgate principal cert going on?
Yes, it is. We had our first meeting today to discuss candidates, and we are moving forward with interviews shortly.
Great.
Okay.
Next Friday if you have.
Just a second.
Oh.
Ty?
On that, Julie, I see on social media, I don't know if it's still relevant, are they still reaching out for community input on that, or is that?
There's a link on our website for input.
Is
Just
that still relevant?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I shared it with the committee today, but it's really about, what are those attributes, leadership attributes that are most important to people. So it's never irrelevant.
I didn't know if that timeframe.
It's not too late. Go ahead and do it.
Okay. The only other thing, Chris, I had before I leave is, I see on social media also how that B company came to MVU with the Vermont Guide and did that, and I really commend MVU for making that happen and letting kids know that avenue's out there and that we support it too. So thanks to whoever made that happen. Cool.
Thank you. Okay, future meeting dates. We got a whole kinds of them. First one is January 16th. It's the special budget meeting. It'll be at 6:30 at the Highgate Elementary School Library. The next regularly scheduled board meeting, it will be in Swanton Elementary Library on January 21st at 6:30. There's a board professional negotiations committee meeting on January 9th, 6:30 at the superintendent's office. The professional negotiations committee with the association will meet January 14th, January 28th, and February 11th at 6:30 here at the MVU School Library. The board will meet before at 6 in the MVU conference room. Board support Personnel Negotiations Committee will meet January 16th at 5 at the Highgate Elementary School Library. And the Support Personnel Negotiations Committee with the association will meet January 30th at 6:30 at the MVU School Library.
Chris, we haven't met yet in the Babcock building. Would that be an option for our meeting on the 21st?
Oh, well, ask Tina.
Yeah, we were supposed to do a tour.
That's right.
Was that building there when you went to Swanton?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's where I started.
Yeah, you may know somebody.
That's the only building that was there.
That's the only building that I started too, yeah.
Actually had Miss Babcock.
Is there a place to even meet over there?
Yes. Oh, yeah, they have a library.
Yeah, but that library,
Yeah,
it's not.
Tiny.
Oh, they have some.
It's pretty tiny.
Meet always.
We will at least, I'm sure, do a tour, but it would be nice to examine space opportunity, But I don't want to push Dina over the edge if she doesn't think that's the right thing to do.
I'd also have some concerns of moving our actual meeting place, because just for public to know where we're meeting.
Yeah.
We always meet in the school library. I like the idea of having a tour because we didn't get to see that part of the building, but I'd like to see our meeting place be where it normally is. Okay, so now we need a motion to go into executive session for non-union and administrative salary information and parental concern letter.
And the side letter.
And a side letter.
I'll make that.
Any discussion?
Are we inviting anyone in?
For the non-union and administrative salaries, Julie.
That's it.
That's it. And then for the side letter, Julie, and then for the parental concern letter, just the board.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.